Monday, September 24, 2018, I call Fire County Administrator to order. Today we have Bob Miller from Crossroads Church and Education, so if you will stand and remain standing.
Father, it would be my prayer today that you would remind us all of our responsibilities to be good stewards. Father, we need to remember, and I need to remember today, that I have a stewardship of my influence, stewardship, Father, of money that's not mine, that I'm responsible for. Each person here has that same responsibility. So, Father, just help us to remember that we're accountable servants, and we're accountable to you first and foremost. Father, as we remember that, we give you honor and glory and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
First thing on the agenda is recognition of the minutes from the September 10, 2018 Commissioners Court meeting and September 12 and 18, 2018 special Commissioners Court meetings. Is there any changes or anything added? Nothing, so recognized. Budget amendments, to consider and act upon approving budget amendments for the 2017-2018 fiscal year, and to authorize the county auditor to prepare a budget amendment effective 9/30/18 to make any necessary transfers for the year end. Transfers will be made with the departments whenever possible, otherwise the Tennessee fund will be used.
Any questions? Carrie, I do have just a couple questions on general judicial, 400,000.
Yes.
What is that to cover?
Appointed
Court.
attorneys.
Okay. And then the next,
And that's for the time period of,
Ending 9/30/18, October 17th through September 18th.
and then the second page, under public service, other expenditures, 15,000. Taking from that to general administration, was it cremations? Okay, thank you. I make a motion that we approve the budget amendments as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 5-0. I said right-handed, I'm sorry. Number 3, enterprise fleet. Consider and act upon approving vehicles for participation in enterprise fleet management program. Kirby, right?
yes.
Yes, I placed some items on your,
And we got those ahead of time.
perfect, and these have, just a little bit, I've added some additional detail, for example, quantity of vehicles next to the numbers, and pieces to see exactly what we're looking at. I also included the synopsis that we already gone over in court and prior court date, just to again reiterate, the benefits to the county, because I know it's been, a month or so since I last met with you all. I wasn't sure if there were any questions that you wanted to start with, or if you would like me to just do a quick review and then walk through the numbers, and I'll make brief references. Okay, perfect. So, again, when we last met, we talked about the fleet being, if you separate it from the countywide fleet versus the sheriff's department, two separate ways to look at it, because the sheriff's department, you will currently cycle on a pretty regular clip. Obviously, you want those vehicles to be as fresh as possible. On the rest of the departments, you have about a 13-year life cycle, and 39% of your fleet is over 10 years of age. And so what we found with counties that we work with, and again, we work with quite a few across the country, but examples, and I listed some references in this synopsis for y'all's review in the past, but I also included a video clip from Kern County in California recently at Commissioner's Court where they talked about the enterprise partnership, so that was sent by Carrie on Friday. But again, you have a 39% of your fleet is over 10 years old. It'll take you 13 years to replace that existing fleet. And the idea being that in partnership with Enterprise, the first year, just on the non-sheriff's units, would save you $139,000. And that's based on acquiring more vehicles, having lower maintenance expense, lower fuel expense, and then also selling more of your county vehicles now, which is basically a lot quicker turnaround cycle than you've previously done in the past. In my conversations with Carrie and Chris on Thursday, we talked about the cash flow aspect. And obviously, you know, the county right now spends about $250,000 or so on capital budgets every year for sheriff's office and countywide fleet. And one of Carrie's comments was, again, trying to make sure that you keep it below that. And if you look at the third page of the synopsis, there is, at the bottom, there's the yellow or orange line. And that's the non-sheriff's office purchases that y'all are spending about $150,000 a year. If you look at the total fleet, like I said, it's about $250,000. What we were proposing again is if you lease these vehicles to Enterprise, the lease column, you see it goes from 153, then 231, 269, 336. So that was the question from Carrie's position is, if we don't want to exceed that 250, what are the options there, right? Because the whole idea is to not have that go way up and then have to move monies around. So what I've done with some other counties and cities across the state is, instead of doing a 5-year onboarding, is extend that out to about 7 years. And what you end up doing is, instead of replacing as many vehicles the first 5 years, you stretch that out a bit and it keeps it under that cash flow. That obviously does extend the onboarding period to a couple of years, but it does what the county needs, which is with the non-sheriff's office, gets you into a cycle that's more in that 5 to 7 year life cycle versus 13. So it still cuts it in half, if not a little bit more.
So a question there, Carrie,
Yes.
coming. So on that line item, you're saying on page 3, you're saying the maintenance of the non-sheriff vehicles today are roughly around $107,000. That's today. And then the model that you have positioned here, the lease is, and I'm just picking the first year,
Yes.
$153,519.
That would be the lease versus, and the numbers you're comparing there would be the purchase versus the lease.
Okay,
Not necessarily the maintenance versus the lease, because the maintenance is a separate component. So the maintenance line is all maintenance for the enterprise units as well as your current vehicles remaining on your own. But we also talked on Thursday about maybe the county, there's certain departments that want to do their own maintenance because you already have maintenance in-house, which I addressed as well. And then a lot of the equipment that you all have in your county, you know, your current fleet is older and is not really a computer-owned use, right? And so if the county wants to maintain vehicles in-house, you can certainly do that and remove that from the program. And I did do both models, one with maintenance and one without. What we found is a company, and we're very good at maintaining vehicles in a very cost-effective way. But if you've already got the infrastructure and you wanted to leave some departments or all departments within your system, you're still going to receive a substantial discount in maintenance because you've got newer vehicles and they're going to require less maintenance. The idea of outsourcing it is, and what we've seen with clients, if you reach out to some of those references, if the ones that did outsource, they still maintain their existing shops, but they have more time to maintain the quicker turnaround time on their equipment, as well as dump trucks, larger items that take more time versus oil change, wiper blades, that type of stuff. And so it got the turnaround of the existing maintenance a lot quicker, which also allowed them the different departments to outsource it in the local tax base, which is popular.
so the model that you're recommending, and forgive me if I'm not following, I'm just trying to make sure I'm following. I'm specifically looking at the maintenance for the non-sheriff right now, because I know that was a discussion at budget that sheriff had, trying to understand which ones would be rotated out. The $106,920, that's our current state, that's our current
On the non-sheriff.
on the non-sheriff. And so the model that you're proposing to the court, should we be looking at this purchase line item of 158 or a lease, or is there a different hybrid?
You would look at the entire way across. So the column that says fleet budget On the non-sheriff units, your fleet budget is around 397. That encompasses the purchase, the maintenance, the estimated surplus, and the fuel component.
Okay,
So that's your line item there. What Enterprise would propose is replacing approximately 26 units and the lease of those units, if you did like for like, meaning the types of vehicles that you will have in your fleet currently, is 153. The maintenance goes down to 78 because you'd be taking 26 of the highest cost maintenance vehicles out and replacing it with the lower cost maintenance number, which is that 48, 43 on average up there at the top right. So you've got 78,000 there. Because you're getting rid of a lot more vehicles a lot quicker, in this case, you'll typically replace about 523 units a year. In this case, you're replacing 26. You would take an estimated 114,000 in equity back into the general fund or whichever fund it comes from, whether it's road and bridge, et cetera. Your fuel is 140,000, so your fleet budget is 257. And so you'll notice the net cash is 139,000 lower.
okay,
That's the idea. So if you go down that list on the right-hand side, the net cash, that is always going back to that original 397. And so you'll see the first 5 years, there's savings there, then you have the 173 is a huge number there. That's taking the equity of those original 26 units that you acquired through Enterprise and taking the equity and rolling it back into the county or into the program. So, and I know it's been a while, but just as a basic example, $30,000, you purchase a vehicle. In our model, you write it down to 5. So the 5 never leaves the county's bank. You fund 25,000. At the end of that 4 or 5 years, whatever, in this hypothetical situation, we sell that vehicle for you and we sell it for 15,000. The difference between that 5 and 15 is the county's money. So you'll get that equity and roll it into the next vehicle. That's what makes this a sustainable model, because cycling makes sense. Again, you've got a 5-year-old or so vehicle and it's worth a lot. You take that equity, you apply it back into the program, and what it ends up doing is that's creates that sustainable model. And so that's where you see that 173. And then there are a couple of years down here where you're leasing more units, and so there's negatives. But then you have, again, the fifth year in 2027, again, where there's another positive because you're taking that larger amount. So this is the model, just high level. The information that I put in these packets was what I got from Carrie with regard to how many vehicles, the quantity, the types, and exactly the way it would work. So that's really cash flow.
thank you.
Sorry, I wanted to.
No, you're good, that's good.
When it comes to maintenance of the vehicles, what's the turnaround time for that?
So if you do maintain the vehicles at local shops, then again, you're going in as Enterprise and, you're getting preventative maintenance, so it shouldn't be, very long. I can give you a time period. I can say that normally when counties and cities, they in-house maintenance and they take a vehicle in, it can typically take a lot longer because you're in a particular line, with other county equipment. I don't know exactly what your situation is, so I won't pretend to know that, but if you've ever got, again, going to get an oil change personally, then it shouldn't take any more longer than that. And we have, I believe it's over 40 vendors here in the Emerald area that are on our program.
I've just sent around a listing of the vehicles that I'm looking at to replace, trying to put the mileage and kind of the priorities by department. And at the very bottom, you're gonna see where we are budget-wise. We have 2 different funds that we have money budgeted in, so, look at that. Let's see.
So Carrie, on this first rotation, how you have priority 1 through 6 listed on that column, is the first fleet rotation specifically priority 1, or is it everything on this list?
Everyone at the upper section where there's a 1, under the number sign that has an extended price, are the ones that would fit into our budget this year. Because the majority of our money would be in more in federal forfeiture funds for law enforcement. Vehicles have the most money, we only have 35,000 in the general fund.
Okay? And I'm assuming,
Because this was a county attorney, forfeiture, these are the gambling funds,
assuming that there have been meetings with the departments listed on here, got road and bridge, county attorney records, everyone is in the know on this, okay?
Lots of emails.
Yes, okay.
If we were to go to this program, what's the lock-in time for us? What's the, how many years are we locked into?
So, and I guess, and again, forgive me for speaking, I don't understand exactly Texas law, but no government can be responsible for past governments. So there's a non-appropriations clause in our contract, which got that. But the other piece is that, the leases, the funding component usually is, on sheriff, I did 4 years, because that's your typical rotation as of right now. On the rest of the county fleet, I did 5 years. And, you know, typically that's the time period. I will say that there's no early termination penalty, no mileage restriction, no chargeable wear and tear. So the way counties and enterprise buy vehicles, get a substantial discount on the front end of the vehicle. So essentially you're in an equity position after about month 3, right? So at any time, if you decided you didn't need that vehicle or didn't, you know, want to do the program, there is a payoff, what is owed versus what it's worth, right? And because the county buys vehicles at a very aggressive, you know, rate, you're gonna break even. So if you needed to get out of that vehicle, it would just be a true up. It'd be what it's worth versus what it's owed, and that would be the difference. And so if it's worth more than it's owed, then we would write you a check. So that's really the, I guess, the detail part of the question.
So the turnaround on the sheriff's office is 4 years?
No. As far as getting, the turnover, meaning the lease, the term of the lease, yes, I set those up at 4 years. Because right now, your average is around between 4 and 6, so right around that 4.5 to 5. So I set them up the same way, but ultimately, if you wanted to extend the vehicles, you certainly could, but it keeps with your current pace.
And Carrie, you feel good about the program? I know this is an initiative that probably was a lot more once you got into the detail of it. Do you feel comfortable with this move?
Well, I won't say that I feel comfortable because it is different from anything we've ever done, and there are some unknowns, but it has proven to work in other entities.
And there's some clauses in there that can protect us if we feel like, for whatever reason, we're not a right fit, right?
How many department heads that like to speak on this program?
Are we talking about the sheriff's office vehicles doing this? Because if you're saying a 4-year turnaround on patrol vehicles, you can't do 4 years. We're doing like over 50,000 miles a year on our patrol vehicles.
But after 2 years, could they not be moved to another section and get new ones for patrol?
Another section like, either within the sheriff's office?
Right, move it to admin or somewhere for the 2 years.
Usually after 2 years, they're not, I wouldn't, consider them good vehicles.
Okay,
You just
so
talk about
maybe
patrol
option them
vehicles.
after
Yeah, I'm just
2
talking
years.
about patrol.
Just the patrol vehicles, what we're talking about. Because those vehicles are ordered differently, they're not,
Correct.
they're not really a standard sedan or vehicle that a detective could use. I mean, they've got the rubber floor mats and they've got all this extra equipment on it that you typically wouldn't have on a regular car that you use for detective or even an admin person.
And again, I would say, you know, just speaking to the counties that I've worked with, you know, they are doing that, you know, 3 or 4 year, you know, sometimes even 5-year term. But, you know, looking at y'all's fleet profile, it does show the mileage on average on your full-size SUVs anywhere between 15 and 26,000 miles on page 4. So again, that may be because you're rotating them into a different department, you know, or a different application, but that's just taking the total miles divided by the number of
We're
years you've had it.
driving most of these patrol vehicles are driven
24/7.
24/7.
Absolutely.
So they're putting.
Get it.
They're putting.
Probably some of those are taking vehicles where, you know, like Randall County, they assign patrol vehicles to a person and that keeps that vehicle.
Yeah.
Which they last longer than about 2 miles.
Right.
But ours are 24/7.
Fair enough. And so I would say that in that example, the way we've done it in the past is we've done, you know, again, if you do a shorter cycle on your patrol units, let's say you do 24 months or 36 months, you can certainly do that. It basically just changes the depreciation a little bit, and maybe makes the monthly payment, you know, a little bit higher, but it's not gonna change it drastically. And then ultimately, at the end of that term, you could do with it whatever you wanted. I mean, the other piece is if you wanted to, you know, remove the sheriff's department from it, you know, the patrol units and just do, let's say the admin, there's an Explorer on there that you're looking for. You know, if you wanted to look at the county-wide and get into that better cycle that's similar to the sheriff's department, then maybe you focus on that. And then, you know, if you feel comfortable with the program, then maybe next year the board decides to go forward with the sheriff's department. Again, everything is flexible within this, and the idea here is that we, you know, I'd love to prove to you that everything that we're saying is valid. So, let me have some examples, or one of the examples to prove that the program works.
Do you have other entities that use this on patrol vehicles?
Yes, Loudoun County,
And how do
Berkeley
they,
County.
how do you handle those?
So,
Cause I've driven one of those vehicles for years, and I know what it's talking
Yes.
about. They break down, burn down, within a couple of years.
Right.
They gotta be gone.
and so what we've done with those counties is, again, we set them up on a, you know, shorter term, let's say 3 or 4 years. Or if they do the 5-year term, again, that's really more of a cash flow conversation, right? It's that the county wants to replace more vehicles quicker, but they're gonna drive them harder in those first 2 years and then rotate it to a different, you know, different use. Maybe you remove a couple light bars or remove some of the equipment. That's the way the counties have done it in the past. But, you know, Case County, Vernon County, Gillespie County, Webb County, these are all ones that I know specifically because I initiated the partnership with the sheriff's departments. That's the way they've done it. So they've done it either a 4 or 5 year term. I do have a couple that are doing that short 24, 36-month term. But again, it's how comfortable is the county with, you know, with rotating vehicles that quickly. And
Can't imagine doing anything with those vehicles after they're finished with it, because
We sometimes give them to other departments, but they're not driving them in a law enforcement capacity, they're like purchasing.
all the stuff you gotta take out.
I don't think we ever auction them after 2 years, they're used longer than 2
Right.
years.
Well, I know some of them, we have auctioned them, and when David Harder was here, and we're actually getting, I mean, they auctioned off for like $10,000. That was amazing that these Tahoes were, you know, because I mean, they're nice looking, you know, we keep them nice and up and everything else, but I mean, the insides, mechanics of them are.
And Carrie, on this spreadsheet that you provided us, which I'm assuming this is the action, we're taking this to approve this list, are there any patrol vehicles on this list?
There are 2.
2, okay. So to your point, Kirby, you're like, if you wanna take those 2 out, it's not gonna really affect the numbers at a high level until the program gets started, we feel comfortable with it.
Right, I mean, for me, I know that, you know, the examples that I have with other counties, you know, either the sheriff's department is the one that's leading the conversation because they wanna freshen up the fleet, or they wanna delay it because they're more comfortable with their current program, they're not satisfied with it, and the real benefit, to be honest with you, is with the non-sheriff's units because they're so old at that 13-year cycle. So the real way to dig out of that part of it, which would lower your maintenance costs substantially, is to do that non-sheriff unit. And though, like I said, the reason why counties, you know, and sheriff's departments want it is because maybe their fleet is older. Y'all are in that situation. It's strictly a funding solution for sheriff's department because we're not providing the maintenance on those units. So ultimately, it's up to the board.
On those patrol vehicles, are we just transferring them to other departments and such? Is that what has happened?
Mostly to other departments, yes.
After 2 years?
That's what the sheriff's office is saying.
So comparatively to our county, Cobb County, ones in service, is there any comparison as far as, speaking of the sheriff's departments, the usage and what we as a county use? You have similar comparisons?
Yes, I mean, the sheriff's office in every county does cycle their vehicles quicker. Y'all are on that lower end, meaning your sheriff's office is cycling vehicles out, or at least on the patrol side, quickly, right? As compared to other counties. Your non-sheriff's fleet is very similar to every county across it. But yeah, on the sheriff's office, you would be on the better end with the cycling quicker, because your age is about 4 years on average. So I've seen anywhere between 3.5 and 11.
Hey, I don't think we're opposed to, like, you're mixing the sheriff's office, I don't think we're opposed to the sheriff's office vehicle. We just want to bring attention to the fact that the Tahoes that we drive for patrol, that they run up down the road at excessive speeds and bend on the poles and stuff, those are the ones we're talking about. The rest of them would be just fine, I think. We're not riding those two, you know, we're not wearing them out, they're just doing their typical business, so just to be clear on that. But the Tahoes, we just feel like they need to be rotated out of patrol in 2 years. A lot of those, the ones that Kerry's talking about, we rotate to the SRO officers or to different areas, but not working, maybe just whatever year it takes them, but just don't feel like those vehicles ought to be running down the road at the speeds we have to beyond that 2 years period, 100,000 miles.
How many retail vehicles are we talking about?
9, there's probably 9, there's 9 vehicles that we have in the patrol division right now, and of course, like I said, we rotate some of those to the SRO units, but those guys are driving those vehicles in that 25% of the time that they're not at the school, but they're driving them, you know, like for the summertime, they'll be driving those vehicles on the road, so we need to maintain those vehicles as well. But some of those don't necessarily have the real high mileage, so that's the ones we're kind of rotating out, if that makes sense.
So how many are we looking at a year, 2, 3?
Well, at this point, we're adding 5 people for listening, so we're asking for 2 new vehicles. And so,
Well, we want to arrest 2 new vehicles because the SROs.
Right.
We've added
we're
2
still,
new SROs.
we still need to be mindful of the vehicles that we have, that we need to keep, with the 5 new employees, we need to be mindful those vehicles need to be in good condition as well, that we're keeping.
They'll put more mileage. We don't have 9 patrol vehicles. The 5 new people will still use one of those 9 vehicles because not everybody's working at the same time. But there'll be more miles on it because now instead of having 4 mandatory officers out there, we're gonna have 5 mandatory officers each shift to cover the Lisbon area. So there will be more mileage put on the vehicles.
I guess might be ideal for you guys.
How many vehicles for the sheriff's office are in their budget?
Only 2 patrol vehicles, we had 5 CID vehicles, which I think they were doing in Paulus for those, and then the 2 Tahoes, the dispatch Tahoes for patrol, and 1 admin vehicle as well as for us.
So you're good with it, you'd be okay with it?
Yeah, as long as we can, I think as long as we
Bottom
can,
line.
right, as long as they can
Switch them out.
switch them out.
Yeah.
Something else that he sent to us was, we'll put our own equipment on these vehicles, we don't need them, with equipment on them, and then we want our own maintenance. And then, the mileage is the only issue, so we're good.
I make a motion that we approve vehicles for participation in the Enterprise Fleet Management Program.
So,
I have a motion and a second, all in favor, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Number 4, vouchers, to consider and act upon the approval of the payment of vouchers processed by the county auditor's office for the period September 5 through September 19, 2018. Check numbers 182176 through 182408, and wire transfers 1128 through 1124, and also 1135, including procurement card, for a grand total of $2,707,451.96.
So move as the, county judge has generated the checks, 182-176, 182-408, and line number 1128 to 1154, and total now $2,650,000.
Second.
I'd like to,
Okay.
still troubled about not having any prior approval for out-of-state travel. I still think that out-of-state travel needs to have some approval and proof that it is beneficial to the county.
I think that it's a special, and this has been an ongoing special for a number of years, I recall. And I think, a number of you guys were sitting on, possibly, Commissioner Kelly, was done. I always thought that, number one, it's the individual's, budget, the elected official or the department head budget, if it is including some benefit to the county. Networking is a great benefit to the county. And, some of the issues that are discussing, I think we're probably referring to the trip that Commissioner, Revere took, so it's Washington DC. There are a number of issues that will affect not only this county, but throughout the state of Texas in respect to compensation. And if you are engendering the compensation that is nationwide, I think that has some benefit that can be brought back to the respective counties.
But it needs to be sold to somebody, not just, I'm gonna go, but that's not the only person that went on that trip.
And I think we need to be
And
mindful
so-
if we talk, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
It's not, it hasn't been that many years ago that if we were gonna travel outside the county, that we needed to have at least the judges equivalent.
Well,
And
you
I
know,
think at this particular time, there wasn't enough time, it was kind of I mean, it's pretty quick.
I think that, see some point that, I don't know, I have some issues of concerns that elected officials were accountable to, the voters. And if there's some benefit that is going to be derived from that, I don't necessarily think we have
Is it a
to.
personal benefit or is it a benefit for the county? You know, there's always a personal benefit.
Well, I
You know,
think,
you can learn something everywhere you go, but
well, I think that was the national,
what's gonna come back to the county?
the national discussion that was being held in the conference that was, Commissioner McGee and, Constable Estrada went to, is certainly a discussion that is transferring throughout this nation right now. And I think that, we're talking about, immigrants, both legal and illegal, but we have a discussion that is certainly a concern to Bonner County, as it is to Laredo and Grayling.
Well, you're not gonna change my mind, so.
Well, I understand that, but I want to make sure that, it's laid out to the benefit of, I think that this has some benefit not only to the citizenry, but, to the elected, to the voters as well, so.
Yeah, I think from a
Well, I guess-
policy perspective, if we do discuss out of state, and certainly, your perspective, Commissioner Turk, and I respect that, that will affect the entire county. There are quite a few that travel out of state, so if that's a policy that you're looking at, that happens even outside this court.
I know it does, and I don't think that would hurt a darn thing if they came to the judge or somebody and said, this is what I'm traveling for, and have a program or something that lays out and says, this is what's gonna benefit our county. But to,
I don't have a problem
You
with
know,
that,
later-
but I don't think that there should be a veto.
I think it could be.
So, I'm necessarily with that, but I do, concur with you that we share information.
Okay, I have a motion, and a second, all in favor, raise your hand.
For the vouchers?
Yes. All opposed? Number 5, insurance report. Do you recognize the insurance fund report? Okay. I can see this. Okay, is there any questions on it? Number 6, so recognize number 5. Number 6, recognize the monthly treasurer's report. And then,
Okay, this morning in Amarillo National Bank, we have $10,150,232.54. And our rate this morning, we're earning 2.27%. The tax pool, have $408,008.52, earning 1.98. Tax pool prime is $10,266,672.22, and we're earning 2.20. And Texas class is $4,766,507.83, earning 2.26. So our total cash available this morning is $25,591,421.11.
Thank you. Thank you. Can't believe they started a fiscal year already.
Number 7, Potter Randall Appraisal District yearly report on September 12, 2018. Potter Randall Appraisal District meeting. Sherry Taylor.
Morning.
Good morning. Fill it in, Commissioner Church.
board did meet on September 12th. They recognized employee Alex Chavez for 20 years of service. Officer certificate. They awarded the bid for paving the parking lot to Lone Star Construction for $28,460. They did choose to reject all the bids for their new software. The chief of appraiser would like more time to consider new software, which is currently still in development with a new vendor, which this new vendor is actually the ones that wrote our current tax system, and we'll have to consider it. If they go with this. The hearing on the property value study for Richland ISD and Highland Park. And happy, Mr. Church brought this up back in May, that there was, the state did not agree with, the appraisal district's values. Happy's turned out fine. Highland Park and Richland, first year of the grace period. And it has to do with some commercial property, did not agree. Namely, the Harrington Highland Park, they didn't mention the Richland.
What happens if it's not corrected, then they withhold the state funds from the schools? The state funds, yeah. So it's a way that the state has of whipping everybody into valuations up to a level they choose,
Yes.
which I think is kind of.
Which then they say, well, values are rising, why are tax rates not staying?
And we had this discussion with, our representative and,
Higher level state discussion. And then last, High Plains Water Conservation District and Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District boundaries are not correct. And so we're meeting for price today to find out how to fix that.
How can boundaries not be correct?
You're like,
Don't ask me.
they haven't determined how it happened. But now they're trying to figure out a way to fix it. And it may take legislation.
Thank you.
I hope they're having that discussion with the folks on the ground.
Right, number 8, tax rate for fiscal year 2018-2019. Adoption of the tax rate of 168,500 per $100 payment for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018. Over here.
I move adoption of the tax rate of 168,500 for $100 valuation for fiscal year October 1, 2018 through September 30, 2018.
Okay, have a motion, ready to second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you. Number 9, loan of vehicles from U.S. Marshals Service. To consider and act upon a proposal for the sheriff to take possession of one or more vehicles on loan from the U.S. Marshals Service.
This is a vehicle that we have a officer in that unit right now, and they've offered to give us a vehicle for his use. And so right now he's driving a pickup that's not real practical, so we'd like to take this vehicle and use it, and we'll put some equipment in it. And then, the fuel and oil and stuff, oil changes. We don't know, apparently they've got he said overabundance of vehicles that they're seized vehicles that we'll be able to use.
Get to go choose.
Pretty much, but we're not gonna be getting Corvettes or Cadillacs or nothing, but it'll be something that's as practical that we can use, but it'll be a free car essentially for that specific job function.
And I'm assuming that'll add to the fleet? It's a vehicle we're taking full possession of.
For fuel and for
Insurance.
maintenance and insurance.
Is there something specific around that position that he or she doesn't have a vehicle? Like, that's unusual though to me if they don't have a vehicle.
Well, right now he's driving a vehicle it's a seized vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pickup truck, and again, for what he's doing, go out and searching for with a lot of people with the marshal service, maybe have something that's more practical, like a sedan four-door type vehicle. That maybe will fit in with these.
Back.
Right back, yeah.
So is their job function is something specific to the marshal service, and that's why they're saying,
Say that again?
their job function is specific to the marshal service?
Right.
Is that, and that's why
It's
they're
Forest
saying?
Service, they're gonna be running on fugitives.
Okay.
He will be running on
Color
fugitives.
gaming.
Right.
And also outside too.
I'll make a motion that we accept the deal from the US Marshal Service.
Motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you. Number 10, agreement for sheriff's office access to first responder network authority to consider and act upon an agreement with AT&T for access to the U.S. Department of Commerce first responder network, known as FirstNet.
And this basically, I think the fire department had, they already went to it. It's just it's a FirstNet with AT&T. Right now we have all of our work with Sprint. But in case of emergencies, FirstNet moves you ahead of everybody else. So, when you're calling at 5 o'clock, going home and you get a busy signal or whatever, and it says try your call later or whatever. The sheriff's department and law enforcement, like the fire department, us, we would be moved up to the tier where you have priority over everybody else in case of emergencies or an incident occurs. And it's gonna be cheaper than Sprint also. So,
How much cheaper? You know?
I think it's a few, about, I'm trying to, don't quote me on this, but I think it's about $5 a card. And we have like 20, so it'd be $100 a month, $1,200 a year.
Yeah, that was one of my questions when I was researching this. It looked like a monthly fee. It reminded me of like a data plan on a cell phone is what it looked like.
And that's what it is.
Is it, okay?
We're paying like $42.99 with Sprint for our cards, and this would be like $36.99, so somewhere around there. But the main thing is that the priority access in cases of emergency.
Yeah, what was interesting to me, that I didn't know about this program, I think it was in 2012, or Congress took action, someone took action to say, hey, all first responders need to be on some type of common network. And for whatever reason, this two partnership is what came together. I was looking out there to see if there were other vendors. It seemed to me that this was the only partnership that existed at this level. And it was for all first responders on a national level, was my takeaway, but I don't know a lot of the details.
It is.
That's, okay. So you'll actually be moving completely away from your Sprint and moving to this as your carrier for that.
Right, we will still have, like our command trailer has, we have Verizon, a Verizon card, and we'll still have a Sprint card in there, and it's just, in case something, just a backup. So we have all three carriers in our command.
So would this be for everything or just a subset of those that are in the field, if you will?
It'll be for all of our, any of the vehicles that have, MDTs, computers in the vehicles.
Okay. Okay.
Move that, we enter into an agreement with AT&T for access to the U.S. Department of Commerce first responder network authority known as FirstNet.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0.
I'm glad we're joining in on that. It's been discussed at many of our judges and commissioners conferences of the good program. Something initiated after 9/11.
Item number 11, Techshare Local Government Corporation to consider and act upon becoming a member of the Techshare Local Government Corporation, and to take all actions to do so. Such actions are: name a member of the Commissioners Court to serve as county representative of Techshare LLC, and to serve as one of the municipal incorporators of Techshare LLC. Want to do this one at a time, Randall, you want all of them?
I don't think it makes any difference, just
Okay, I'll just let you.
how do you want to keep a record of it?
Go ahead and, start.
Okay. As you know, Techshare is got various different, it's got the prosecutor, got the courts, general package, working on the magistrate package, and they're
routinely rolling out now and have been for the last year, well, probably a year and a half. Every 3 months, they roll out additional stuff. And the head entity, what it is counties that are involved in that through an interlocal agreement are working with the Council of Urban Counties, which y'all are a member of. And vast majority of the members of the Council of Urban Counties don't have tech share. And then they're called upon to be voting on all that. And so the discussion started about 2 years ago about somewhere or another doing something different about the ownership of it. And they've been working on it for quite some time, and I will have to compliment John Dayhill, the General Counsel of the Council of Urban Counties. He's put together one heck of a set of bylaws. Scott and Tad both are agreeing, and I'll quote Tad is saying they're not only good, they're excellent. Other people across, members that are across the county, are Collin County, Dallas County, Benton County, Johnson County, Midland County, Barton County, Tarrant County, and Travis County. All have been reviewing what's going on here. So what we're trying to do is move away from the leadership being Council of Urban Counties and finding a replacement for that. That replacement is what's called the Local Government Corporation. So the decision to do that is based on several different reasons. It operates, let me read, it is a governmental entity for the purpose of immunity and compliance with state open meetings and public information. But it is operated and created like a Texas nonprofit corporation. Okay? So that's two of the big reasons for moving it, is for the immunity and the compliance with open meetings, and it also protects our programs from us having to, Council of Urban County might have had to give those away if something happened and then get sued or something. So now we're gonna do, if all of this gets approved, we now decide to do this, then we will be doing an ILA, an interlocal agreement with the local government corporation. So that'll just replace CUC. Another advantage of it is it gives you a board of rec role in the program, because it's gonna be only members of the LGC that will be the member, have a director. So you've knocked out a bunch of other directors that weren't even in it.
So people that own the technology.
Right.
Okay.
So the first thing that you would need to do if you're wanting to do this is to determine who would be on that board. And it is, by bylaws, has to be one of the 5 people on the court. So I talked to the judge about that, and she felt like she was willing to do that.
That day I did.
Correct?
Yes, you're correct.
If that's what y'all choose to do.
Stood up and fell off.
Well, it'll amount to at least one meeting, maybe 2 a year. It's not a big time frame. The rest of what happens with the tech share system is not changing. We will still have the tech share individuals that have, are stakeholders. Like I'm the stakeholder for the prosecutor's deal. Gary Jackson's the stakeholder for the court. And so that will stay in place, and we'll be making budget decisions, just like we have been all along. We'll be making budget decisions, we'll be making, the decisions on where we're gonna head with programs. All of those sort of things will still stay down to the people that are actually doing the work and fixing it. The funding won't change either. It's gonna be just exactly like it is right now. which the funding is basically coming from, the activities of the tech share. LLC will be the tech share activities, which is the project development funds, the resource sharing funds, which is annual maintenance and operation funds, and then also the implementation funds. Any person that buys a tech share product will have the ability to then also join this LGC. You do not have to join that, but quite frankly, it's in your best interest to protect what you've got to have a director on that board. So that's the situation, that's what we need to do, so I would say, really, the first thing you probably ought to do is decide whether you want to be on that board, which I think then covers number 2 for you to approve the, local government corporation stuff. Right? And then move to who it is you want on the board, and then also then approve the bylaws, or if you vote to do it, then we vote on approving the bylaws. They work hard on those. I mean, you get 8 counties together and nobody has anything to say bad about it. They've done their job well.
From my perspective, the bylaws look pretty sound.
Well, from an LGC, not as it relates to TechShare, but obviously we have something like this local. And so it took me a year to understand the arm and how it all worked contractually. But I know there's obviously one for the city that we have representation on, and I sit on that. And so one of the things that I learned through that process are the 2 main reasons an LGC exists, or for what I have found, in my own opinion, equity and then contracting power, because it's a neutral body. And so one of the things I learned many years ago joining was when the hotel came up, that became property of the LGC versus the city, right? The contract negotiations, that piece, that separate body. And I always thought about it like an arm, an extension. It also had different purchasing rules, which I learned over the years. So I'm assuming that's part of the foundation of why you guys are wanting to move specifically to those who have the technology and have equity, so that those are the people that have a voice at the table.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other thing too is, we're this close to probably having tech share prosecutor in all the counties except for about 3 or 4. Others besides these counties that, I'll say, people are on the tech share prosecutor that do not decide to buy into the ownership. That's the way I should say it. Like the 100 judicial the 90, one of them southwest of Lubbock's doing it. So, but what it does is, right now, around Chicago, there's Chicago, and then I think there's 4 or 5 counties that surround the county of Chicago. And kind of called it the donut. Whatever Chicago does, the other 5 counties tend to do. Whatever one of the others kind of start, well, the Chicago area up there, they're looking at contracts right now already. But turning it into the LGC also makes it much easier for us to contract with people outside the state of Texas. Because the Council of Urban Counties is tied to Texas.
See, I think it's Cook County there, Chicago.
So,
Anyway, if Chicago area buys into it, do they become eligible to be on the LGC then?
anybody would be able to get on the LGC if they decide just maintenance ownership.
So eventually we could be taken over by outside the state.
Because of the numbers.
I guess that could be possible, but it would take a whole lot, since we're the biggest state in Texas, it would take quite a few. I'd say Houston and Chicago would counterbalance and stuff, something like that, the Metroplex. But the bottom line is, even if they do, it's in their best interest to do what's right for all of us, because if you're not doing what's right for all of us, you're not doing what's right for yourself. And honestly, the amount that we own in regards to Tech Sheriff Prosecutor and Tech Sheriff Court compared to Travis County, Dallas County, very negligible.
I make a motion that we approve the certification formation of Texture Local Government Corporation to approve the bylaws presented of Texture Local Government Corporation and to appoint Judge Tanner as the Commissioners Court representative on the Local Government Corporation for Texture.
I'll give you an objection, I second.
A motion and a second on the favor.
I saw the first part that you included joining
Yes, I did.
Certification.
I said to approve the certification of formation.
the, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And so, if I could have,
I have it right here. I'll do it after court, is that okay?
okay.
I'll get you.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
This is in our best interest, I promise.
You had us until you said that.
Now we're ready.
Maybe time the day turns around and says, this is a good thing, you know, it's not. Okay, before we start with the rest of this, I wanted to introduce everyone. I'm your purchasing agent, Chris Long. He is the agent for now, and we'll see what happens, but, he's taking over for Vicky, and you're welcome.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. So number 12, formal bid renewal to consider and act upon renewing formal bid number 1136-16, electrical maintenance with David Moore Electric LLC for an additional 1-year term starting November 1, 2018, lasting through October 31st, 19. This is the final renewal year.
I don't know if you need me up here, but my name's here.
Your name's there, so.
And I'm next, so I'm not allowed to go. Do you have any questions about? David Moore?
I don't know, other than I hear they're good to work with, I hear they do things holistically on the county, that, I don't know if that's fair, but that's certainly what I hear.
They've been here long before me. They actually done this building more than I do. As far as electrical.
I make a motion that we approve renewing formal bid 1136-16 with David Moore Electric Company for an additional 1 year, November 1, 2018 through 10/31/19.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Number 13, chiller maintenance, to consider and act upon approving an agreement for chiller maintenance with West Tex Chill Water Specialist LLC at the San Bay Building, in the amount of $13,380. District Courts Building, in the amount of $7,190, and Historic Courthouse, in the amount of $6,350. Contracts with TIPS, contract number 1801001, contracts will be in effect from 10/1/18 through 9/30/19. Yeah.
That's just the chiller maintenance and pumps and everything in the room, water treatment hall for every building. With this vendor, I worked with Chris, he was the interim, and, he helped me get into this. We tried to stick with somebody that was already with it, you know, buying so off, I guess, the purchase of one. Anyhow, we're saving a little over $11,000 with this company. Local, they're a little smaller, they're not a big national conglomerate, so. I think we give it a shot.
Who did we have before? Yeah.
And Carrie, I'm assuming with these dollar amounts, especially, if Nick started with, we're saving money, we should be fine on the incoming budget. I kept the dates, is what caught my attention.
Another thing with the dates, prior to me, they were set up, they were staggered. And so they reviewed throughout the year, different times, so we've got them all started.
That's a good idea.
Well, it's just.
And we're just doing a 1-year contract with them.
I thought we approved the contract was
Right.
Okay. An option to renew with them, okay.
Move we approve the agreement for chiller maintenance with West Tech Chilled Water Specialists LLC for our 3 buildings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Number 14, elections to consider and approve the order appointing officers for Central County Station for November 6, 2018 election. To consider and approve the order appointing early voting judges, establishing hours of operation for early voting polling places, and establishing the maximum number of votes for November 6, 2018 election, and to acknowledge the days and hours for early voting and election day voting on November 6, 2018 general election. Voting.
The order appointing the officers for Central County Station for the November 6, 2018 general election as the same officers that we used previously, and that's what I'm proposing again.
Move approval of the order appointing officers for Central County Station for the November 6, 2018 general election.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0.
And Melinda, just to publicly say thank you for going over the edge.
It's a lot of fun.
I happened to drive up and said, well, there's Melinda on the end of the, coming off the edge of the Santa Fe building, so I know that was not an easy task. I was glad to just contribute and not go over the
There
edge.
you go. Thank you. You just force yourself to stand up backwards 13 stories
Yeah.
above the ground on a ledge, and you're good. Okay, the next is the order appointing election judges for early voting and establishing the hours for the early voting polling places, establishing the maximum number of clerks for again the November 6th election. And on these maximum number of clerks, we plan to use the maximum number historically it's the first few days and the last few days, and then to cover some lunch hours because most voters vote between 10 and 3. So when you see 7, 6 is really the norm, but we will float another person in and out like a Sunday vote. This is a reduction in our number of workers compared to our old equipment. So it does save over.
More efficient than
Yes.
that. I move to approve the order appointing early voting judges, establishing hours of operation at early voting polling places, and establishing the maximum number of clerks for the November 6, 2018 election.
Second?
A motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand.
And the final document was just to inform the court of our polling locations and hours for early voting election day, particularly election day. All of our locations are the same, we're still operating under vote centers. So, everything is the same as it has been, so it'll be open voting. If you're a registered voter in Pollard County, you can vote anywhere in Pollard County for election. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, number 15, employment items. Consider and act upon the following employment items: facilities maintenance, new employment of Richard Jacob Diaz as a replacement for Erlinda Samora, custodian tech 1, effective October 1, 2018. It says board, but it should be laid there. Sorry. Somebody, motion on that one.
Approve the employment items as presented.
Motion and second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. And then, information technology. The new employment of Stephen Hickson as senior applications imaging engineer as a replacement for Lana Bracken, effective September 17, 2018. Second. A motion and a second, all in favor? Thank you. Nicholas, you have anything on the projects?
I really don't, we poured concrete over here, it's back, but as far as, well, I guess I can talk about green space. maintenance that everyone's up in arms about. Basically, it's finished.
Tell us a little bit about the up in arms, I'm not,
They're just, I ran across a post on a public forum, and they wanna know what it is, who's responsible for it, what was the purpose, they're just, the same people that talk about everything negative, it's something to talk about. Keep it in the dark. We probably do need to put some signs up.
probably certainly worth the signs.
So they know,
But it looks good.
What will the sign say, Nicholas?
like, I said, it was up to you.
Oh,
Well, if it's okay for people to use it, or if it's not, is there a time, is there a, can they, tents up, is it a picnic, I mean, you know.
No tents.
that's-
Then we'll have a tent city.
I'm just saying we may ought to think about rules and trash cans and things like that, so.
all right, we'll think about that.
But it's finished.
I know, it looks really good.
It's great.
It's good, it's
Well,
great.
it probably would be in terms of, unless you pay attention, you're probably driving by and thinking, not even where Potter County maybe owns that piece of land, right? So, owned by Potter County, kind of thing.
Well, everybody thinks the city.
Let's let them think. No, I'm kidding. I mean, there was a structure there before, people don't realize it's gone now, there's something wrong with those people.
They think it was historic.
Oh, it was historic, all right.
That's my 2 cents.
Awful.
But it's finished.
My only question was, what do you have buried in the middle?
It's for water drainage.
I know.
Okay, number 17, jail report, we have 589 people in our jail, which is a little bit better than 2 weeks ago, a little bit better. We were 607 last time, so. 94 of those were female, none of them are shipped out, 85% are felons, 9% are misdemeanors.
The reason why they're not shipped out is because nobody has been.
Nobody has written, I know. Well, we're working on that.
Right.
We're working on that. Okay, insurance items, Chris, anything? No insurance item. Closed meeting, to convene a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, funds received by the council regarding contemplated litigation. It is 10:09, we'll recess and be back tomorrow. Okay, it is 9:22, we are back, and there was no action taken. 10:22. Sorry. Time goes by so, we're having so much fun. Executive session, there's none. Agenda items for next time. The capital credits, we need to put that back on there. And, just as a reminder, we have, payroll meeting on Wednesday. I can't be here, and I'll get be here. Do we need a couple on that?
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday?
Back on my resolution, but,
Okay.
over time, this, months, yeah.
You'll be here? Sure.
I'd like to, thank the sheriff's department, for all and, Captain Coffee, leading up with, for Lawrence's funeral will be this Saturday, the 29th, 11 a.m. Mount Zion Baptist Church, 7 in Van Buren, and they have, graciously, given to being a, escort and also, honor guard there for Lawrence's funeral. So, family was very pleased and very, happy to be doing so. Thank you.
What was the time?
11 a.m.
I'd like to, discuss that. Sebastian's not here. Okay, I'd like to discuss the, stoplight issue again.
Okay, yeah.
Because I know he's come up with some pricing that, I think we need to talk about some alternatives.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. Nothing else, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.